What if entire civilizations disappeared so completely that modern science can't explain where they went? Not just declined, not conquered or absorbed, vanished. We're talking about advanced societies with millions of people, complex cities, sophisticated infrastructure, all gone in a matter of years or even months. The official story claims these cultures simply collapsed due to drought, disease, or warfare. Natural explanations for natural events, but the evidence tells a different story. Archaeological sites with signs of sudden abandonment, food left on tables, tools dropped mid-use, entire populations evaporating overnight. Government-funded research has buried findings that challenge comfortable narratives. Documentation exists in classified archives, insider testimony from archaeologists who saw things that contradict accepted timelines. When you dig into the actual evidence, patterns emerge. These weren't gradual declines. These were rapid disappearances that left more questions than answers. Today we're examining 10 ancient cultures that vanished without a trace, civilizations that thrived for centuries, then disappeared so completely that we still don't understand what happened. Some of these cases involve suppressed evidence. Others feature academic cover-ups when findings threatened established theories. All of them share one thing in common. The official explanations don't match the physical evidence. Fair warning, what you're about to hear contradicts mainstream archaeology. But the truth is always worth finding. Let's examine 10 civilizations that simply ceased to exist. Number 1 takes us to the Indus Valley in modern-day Pakistan and India. The Harappan civilization flourished for over 1,000 years, from roughly 3,300 BC to 1,300 BC. At its peak, 5 million people lived in over 1,000 settlements. They built planned cities with advanced drainage systems, grid-patterned streets, multi-story buildings. Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa were engineering marvels. Indoor plumbing in 2500 BC, standardized weights and measures, a written language we still can't fully decipher. Then, around 1800 BC, something happened. The cities were abandoned, not destroyed by war, not burned, not conquered, simply left behind. Excavations reveal a strange pattern. No mass graves, no signs of invasion, no evidence of catastrophic natural disaster in the archaeological layers. People just stopped living there. Dr. Jonathan Knoyer led major excavations at Harappa in the 1990s. His team found something disturbing in the final occupation layers. Evidence of hasty departure. Valuable items left behind. Tools abandoned. Pottery intact. As if people intended to return but never did. The mainstream explanation blames climate change. A shift in monsoon patterns. Rivers changing course. Drought forcing migration. Sounds reasonable until you examine the evidence more closely. The Gagar-Hakra river system that supported these cities didn't dry up suddenly. Geological studies show gradual changes over centuries, but the abandonment was rapid. Within a generation, thriving cities became ghost towns. Here's what makes this case interesting. In 1999, researchers found elevated radiation levels in certain areas of the ancient cities. The readings were published in peer-reviewed journals, then quietly forgotten. When Italian researchers attempted follow-up studies in 2004, their permits were revoked. No official explanation given. The Harappan script remains undeciphered despite decades of effort. Over 4,000 inscriptions exist, but the pattern is unusual. Most ancient scripts were decoded by finding bilingual texts, Egyptian hieroglyphs, cuneiform, linear B. But Harappan inscriptions appear on seals and pottery, short sequences, never longer texts that might provide context. Some linguists suggest this indicates the script wasn't fully developed. Others propose something different. What if the longer records were kept on perishable materials that didn't survive? Or what if someone deliberately destroyed them? The civilization that built sophisticated cities with advanced engineering somehow left almost no written legacy. That doesn't add up. 5 million people don't just walk away from their homes without leaving better evidence of where they went or why. But that's exactly what happened to the Harappans. Number 2 brings us to the Maya civilization in Central America. This case is particularly troubling because it happened multiple times. The Maya thrived for over 2,000 years. They built towering pyramids, developed advanced mathematics and astronomy, created a complex writing system. Then they vanished. Not once, but repeatedly. The first major collapse occurred around 900 AD. Within 50 years, dozens of major cities were abandoned. Tikal, Copan, Palenque. These weren't small villages. These were metropolises supporting hundreds of thousands of people. The cities weren't destroyed. They were walked away from, pyramids left incomplete, monuments unfinished mid-construction, elite palaces abandoned with treasures still inside. The official explanation points to drought, deforestation, warfare, overpopulation straining resources. But here's the problem with that theory. The Maya had survived droughts before, some lasting decades. They had sophisticated water management systems, reservoirs, irrigation networks. Why would a drought that happened before suddenly cause total collapse? Dr. Arthur Demarest spent 30 years excavating Maya sites in Guatemala. In his 2004 book, he documented something the mainstream narrative ignores: evidence of deliberate abandonment rituals. In multiple cities, the Maya performed ceremonies before leaving. They sealed temples, buried sacred objects, left offerings. This wasn't panicked flight from environmental disaster. This was organized departure. Where did they go? The population didn't disappear. They migrated. But the question is why they left their magnificent cities behind. The second Maya collapse is even stranger. Around 1500 AD, many northern Yucatan cities were suddenly abandoned. This was after recovering from the first collapse. No Spanish conquest yet. No European diseases. No obvious environmental catastrophe. Cities that had thrived for centuries simply emptied out. When Spanish conquistadors arrived in the 1500s, they found abandoned cities reclaimed by jungle. The Maya they encountered had no memory of who built them. Imagine that. A civilization so completely disconnected from its past that survivors couldn't explain their own monuments. In 2016, research teams using LiDAR technology discovered something remarkable. Hidden beneath jungle canopy were thousands of previously unknown structures, evidence of a civilization far larger and more complex than previously believed. This technology revealed sophisticated agricultural systems, defensive fortifications, a population potentially reaching 15 million at its peak. With that many people and that level of organization, how does a civilization just evaporate? The Maya left thousands of inscriptions, detailed historical records carved in stone. But these texts stop abruptly. No explanation for the abandonment. No records of what happened. The narrative just ends. That's not how civilizations behave when facing slow decline. They leave explanations, warnings, records of their struggles. The Maya left silence. Number 3 takes us to Easter Island in the South Pacific. This case involves one of history's most isolated civilizations and one of its most mysterious collapses. Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, sits over 2,000 miles from the nearest continent, the most remote inhabited island on Earth. Polynesian settlers arrived around 1200 AD. They found a lush island covered in palm forests, rich volcanic soil, abundant bird populations. Within 600 years, the forests were gone, the bird species extinct. The population crashed from 15,000 to just 2,000. And those iconic stone heads, nearly 900 of them dot the island, some weighing over 80 tons. Then the carving stopped, abruptly. The official story is simple: ecological collapse caused by deforestation. The islanders cut down every tree, destroyed their environment, faced starvation and warfare. A cautionary tale about resource management, except the evidence doesn't fully support that narrative. Dr. Terry Hunt, from the University of Arizona, led excavations that challenged mainstream theories. His research, published in 2006, revealed something different. The timeline doesn't match. Pollen analysis shows the forests declined gradually over centuries, not suddenly. The population should have adjusted, but something happened around 1700 AD that caused rapid collapse. What changed? Here's where it gets interesting. In 1722, Dutch explorer Jacob Roggeveen became the first European to land on Easter Island. He reported a thriving population of several thousand, people in good health, functioning society. Just 48 years later, Spanish visitors found a devastated island, population decimated, society collapsed. What happened in less than 50 years? Some researchers point to slave raids. Peruvian ships kidnapped islanders in the 1860s, disease introduced by Europeans, but the collapse began before those events. The Moai construction stopped around 1650 to 1700, before European contact. Before any documented slave raids, the last statues were abandoned mid-carving in the quarry, tools left in place. Work simply ceased. Why would a culture obsessed with monument building for 500 years suddenly stop? More troubling. The later Moai show signs of increasingly desperate construction. Smaller statues, less refined carving, as if resources or skilled labor were failing. Then Rongorongo appeared. This is Easter Island's undeciphered script, found on wooden tablets. Only 24 examples survived. The script is unique, unlike any other writing system in Oceania. When discovered by missionaries in the 1860s, the islanders claimed they could no longer read it. The knowledge had been lost. In less than 200 years, an entire writing system forgotten by its creators. Linguists have tried for over a century to decode Rongorongo. Some symbols resemble writing, others look like pictograms. The sequences don't follow typical linguistic patterns. In 1958, Austrian ethnologist Thomas Barthel published what he claimed was a partial decipherment. He identified astronomical references, creation myths, but his work has never been verified. The script remains mostly impenetrable. What kind of cultural catastrophe causes people to forget their own writing in just a few generations? The Easter Island collapse wasn't just environmental. Something broke the social fabric so completely that knowledge systems disappeared. And we still don't know what. Number 4 brings us to ancient Cambodia and the Khmer Empire. Angkor was the largest pre-industrial city in the world, sprawling over 400 square miles, supporting nearly 1 million people. The temple complex at Angkor Wat is just one small part. The city contained thousands of structures, sophisticated water management systems, networks of canals and reservoirs. It was the center of an empire that dominated Southeast Asia for 600 years. Then, in the 1500s, it was abandoned. The Khmer didn't disappear entirely. They migrated south, but they left behind one of humanity's greatest architectural achievements. Why? The official explanation involves a perfect storm of problems: environmental stress, attacks from Thai kingdoms, a shift away from Hinduism toward Buddhism. These factors supposedly combine to make Angkor unsustainable. But here's what doesn't make sense. The water system was designed for massive populations. It worked through monsoons and dry seasons. Advanced engineering that should have been maintained, not abandoned. Dr. Damian Evans used aerial laser scanning in 2012 to map the complete city. What he found challenged every previous theory. The water system had been over-engineered. Canals so extensive they could support double the actual population. Why build infrastructure for millions when you have 1 million? Unless the population had been much larger and declined before the final abandonment. The laser mapping revealed another mystery: evidence of massive landscape modification that doesn't appear in any historical records. Entire sections of forest cleared, hills reshaped, construction projects larger than Angkor Wat itself. But no temples, no monuments, just massive earth moving. What were they building? When the Thai kingdom of Ayutthaya sacked Angkor in 1431, they found a weakened city. Contemporary accounts describe Angkor as already partially abandoned. The real collapse had begun earlier. Something happened in the late 1300s. Records from that period are spotty. What exists suggests internal problems. The inscriptions that cover Khmer temples suddenly decrease in number around 1370. They don't stop completely, just become less frequent. Then, after 1400, they virtually cease. A civilization that documented everything in stone for 600 years stopped writing. Chinese diplomat Zhou Daguan visited Angkor in 1296. His account describes a thriving city, magnificent temples, complex society. But he also notes something strange. Areas of the city already falling into disrepair, sections of the water system not functioning. This was at the empire's supposed height. Already, decay had begun. The Khmer left Angkor but didn't leave records explaining why. Their descendants in modern Cambodia have legends, stories of curses, divine punishment, but no historical documents survive detailing the decision to abandon humanity's largest pre-industrial city. When French explorers rediscovered Angkor in the 1860s, they found it consumed by jungle, trees growing through temples, roots splitting stones. The Cambodians living nearby knew the ruins existed, but they had no detailed knowledge of who built them or why they were abandoned. In just 400 years, the memory had faded. A civilization capable of building Angkor simply walked away and took their reasons with them. Number 5 takes us to the American Southwest and the ancestral Puebloans. These people built remarkable cliff dwellings throughout what is now Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah. Mesa Verde, Chaco Canyon. Dozens of sites showcasing sophisticated architecture and urban planning. At their peak around 1100 AD, they controlled a region the size of France. Then they abandoned it all. Not slowly, rapidly. By 1300 AD, the cliff dwellings were empty, the great houses of Chaco Canyon silent, the entire Four Corners region deserted. The mainstream explanation focuses on a severe drought that began around 1275. Tree ring data shows 23 years of below-average rainfall. The theory claims this megadrought forced migration. But the ancestral Puebloans had survived droughts before. They had sophisticated water harvesting systems, agricultural techniques adapted to arid conditions. Why would this drought be different? Dr. Timothy Kohler from Washington State University led a study examining over 1,000 ancestral Puebloan sites. Published in 2010, his findings revealed something disturbing. Signs of violence increased dramatically in the final decades before abandonment, not warfare with outside groups, internal violence. Settlements show evidence of burned structures, bodies left unburied, defensive walls built around previously open communities. Something was tearing their society apart from within. Even more troubling, evidence of cannibalism. Multiple sites contain human remains with cut marks, bones broken to extract marrow, skulls crushed. Not isolated incidents. Pattern repeated across dozens of locations in the final occupation period. The academic community debated this evidence for decades. Some researchers denied it could be cannibalism. Others suggested ritualistic practices. But bioarchaeological analysis is conclusive. These people were consumed during times of extreme stress. What causes a civilization to turn on itself? Chaco Canyon presents its own mysteries. The great houses required over 200,000 trees for construction. But the canyon is desert. Where did the timber come from? Researchers traced the wood to forests over 50 miles away. The beams weighed hundreds of pounds. Moving them required enormous labor. Why build massive structures in a location with so few resources? Some archaeologists propose Chaco was a ceremonial center, not a city, but a pilgrimage site where people gathered for rituals. But that doesn't explain the sophisticated road network. Over 400 miles of roads radiating from Chaco, perfectly straight, 30 feet wide in places. These weren't trails, these were engineered roads. Roads require maintenance, substantial populations to justify, resource investment. all for a ceremonial center that might have been occupied seasonally? The roads were abandoned along with the buildings, just walked away from. When the ancestral Puebloans left, they migrated south and east. Their descendants became the modern Pueblo peoples of New Mexico and Arizona. But these descendants have limited knowledge of Chaco or Mesa Verde. Oral traditions preserve some stories, but the detailed history was lost. Why would a people abandon such monumental architecture? Why not return when conditions improved? The cliff dwellings of Mesa Verde are particularly puzzling. Built high on canyon walls, accessible only by ladder. Defensive positions. But defended against what? Archaeological evidence doesn't show large-scale warfare in the region during their construction. Whatever threat they feared, it was serious enough to abandon their fields and homes for precarious cliffside settlements. Then, after building these fortified positions, they abandoned them too. The ancestral Puebloans vanished from the four corners, leaving behind architecture that still stands 700 years later. But no explanation for why they left. Number 6 takes us to Bronze Age Britain and the mysterious builders of Stonehenge. Most people know about Stonehenge, but few realize the culture that built it completely disappeared. The monument was constructed in stages between 3000 and 2000 BC, moving stones weighing up to 50 tons from quarries over 150 miles away. The engineering required sophisticated knowledge. The astronomical alignments show advanced understanding of celestial mechanics. Then, around 2000 BC, the culture that built these monuments vanished. Not just Stonehenge, thousands of stone circles, henges, and monuments dot Britain and Ireland, all abandoned around the same time. What happened? Genetic studies published in 2018 revealed something shocking. The DNA of modern British people shows almost no continuity with the Neolithic farmers who built these structures. Nearly complete population replacement occurred. Dr. Ian Armitt from the University of Bradford analyzed skeletal remains from this period. His research documented a dramatic shift. The old population didn't gradually mix with newcomers, they disappeared. Where did they go? Some researchers propose the Beaker people, migrants from continental Europe, displaced or absorbed the original inhabitants. But population replacement on that scale usually involves violence, conquest, documented conflict. The archaeological record doesn't show massive warfare. Instead, there's a gap, a period where settlement evidence becomes sparse. Then a new culture emerges, with different pottery, different burial practices, different genetics. The monuments were abandoned, not destroyed, not repurposed, simply left behind. Stonehenge continued to be used occasionally for burials into the Bronze Age. But the massive construction projects stopped. Why would a culture capable of moving 50-ton stones across Britain suddenly stop building? The bluestones at Stonehenge came from the Preseli Hills in Wales, 150 miles away. Recent experiments showed it would take hundreds of people months to move a single stone. The logistics are staggering, yet the builders transported over 80 bluestones. That level of organization requires stable leadership, abundant resources, strong cultural motivation. Then that capability just ended. Here's something most people don't know. Stonehenge is just one part of a vast ceremonial landscape. Hundreds of burial mounds surround it, processional avenues, earthwork enclosures, a wooden twin monument called Woodhenge. The entire Salisbury Plain was transformed into a sacred landscape over 1,000 years, then abandoned. Archaeological excavations reveal another mystery. The people who built Stonehenge didn't live near it. Food remains and artifacts at the site come from all over Britain. Pigs from Scotland, cattle from Wales, pottery from various regions. Stonehenge appears to have been a gathering place, where people from across Britain came together. Then they stopped coming. By 1500 BC, Stonehenge and similar monuments had been abandoned for centuries. The people who might have known their purpose were gone. When Romans arrived in Britain 1,000 years later, locals had legends about giants building the stones. No actual, historical knowledge. In just 1,500 years, the collective memory of why Stonehenge was built had been completely lost. Modern archaeology has reconstructed when and how it was built, but we still don't truly know why. And we don't know what happened to the people who invested generations into its construction. They're gone, replaced, their DNA virtually absent from modern populations. Their monuments remain, but their story ended without explanation. Number 7 brings us to South America and the pre-Incan city of Tiwanaku. Located near Lake Titicaca in modern Bolivia, Tiwanaku was one of the most important cities in the pre-Columbian Americas. At 13,000 feet above sea level, it's one of the highest ancient urban centers ever built. The city flourished for over 1,000 years, from around 300 to 1000 AD. At its peak, 40,000 people lived in the urban core, another 400,000 in the surrounding region. Tiwanaku featured monumental architecture, massive stone blocks fitted with precision, sophisticated water management, agricultural innovations that sustained populations at extreme altitude. Then it was abandoned. By 1200 AD, the site was deserted, the people gone, the empire dissolved. What makes this case intriguing is the precision stonework. Some blocks at Tiwanaku weigh over 100 tons. They're fitted together so tightly that a knife blade can't slip between them. The cutting patterns show advanced stoneworking technology, perfectly straight edges, right angles, complex interlocking shapes. How did a Bronze Age culture achieve this precision? Mainstream archaeology attributes it to patience and skill, years of grinding and shaping with stone tools. But experiments attempting to replicate the technique have been only partially successful. Dr. Alexei Vranich from the University of Pennsylvania spent decades studying Tiwanaku's construction. His research revealed engineering knowledge that seems ahead of its time: acoustical properties built into temples, astronomical alignments in architecture, hydraulic systems that controlled water flow throughout the city. This wasn't primitive construction. This was sophisticated engineering. Then it stopped. The abandonment correlates with climate data, showing a severe drought around 1000 AD. Lake Titicaca's water level dropped significantly. The drought theory seems solid until you examine it closely. Tiwanaku's agricultural system was designed specifically for the challenging environment: raised field systems that maximized productivity in poor conditions. These systems should have been resilient to drought, unless the drought lasted longer than any previous one. But tree ring and ice core data don't support an unprecedented megadrought. Something else happened. Spanish conquistadors found Tiwanaku in ruins when they arrived in the 1500s. The Inca Empire controlled the region by then. But the Inca didn't build Tiwanaku. They had legends claiming it was built by gods or giants before the Inca existed. The Inca Empire itself arose around 1300 AD, just as Tiwanaku was being abandoned. Some researchers propose that Tiwanaku's collapse created a power vacuum that allowed the Inca to rise. But why did Tiwanaku collapse? The archaeological record shows the city wasn't destroyed by warfare. No mass graves. No signs of conquest. The monumental core was abandoned while still intact. Recent excavations revealed something strange. In the final occupation layers, evidence suggests deliberate decommissioning. Temples were ritually closed, sacred objects buried or removed, doors sealed. This was organized abandonment, not panicked flight. The people who left Tiwanaku didn't disappear entirely. They dispersed into surrounding regions. Their descendants became part of Aymara culture. But the centralized power structure collapsed. The ability to organize massive construction projects vanished. Within a few generations, the knowledge of how Tiwanaku was built faded. When Spanish chroniclers interviewed Aymara people in the 1500s, they heard legends, stories of creation, tales of a lost age, but no historical accounts explaining what happened. The precision stonework at Tiwanaku raises another question. If this technology existed, why didn't it spread? Later Andean cultures built impressive structures, but none achieved Tiwanaku's precision. Knowledge was lost, techniques forgotten. A civilization capable of moving 100-ton stones and cutting them with remarkable precision simply walked away from their city, and the secrets of their engineering went with them. Number 8 takes us to the Arctic and the mysterious disappearance of the Greenland Norse. This case is particularly well documented because it happened relatively recently, and yet it remains unexplained. Norse settlers arrived in Greenland around 985 AD. Led by Eric the Red, they established two main settlements. The eastern settlement and the western settlement housed several thousand people. For over 400 years, the Greenland Norse thrived. They raised livestock, hunted walrus for ivory, traded with Iceland and Norway, then they vanished. The last recorded contact was in 1410, a wedding documented in church records. After that, silence. When Norwegian ships finally visited in the 1500s, they found abandoned settlements, houses empty, churches standing but unused, no people. What happened to the Greenland Norse? The standard explanation involves climate change. The medieval warm period ended around 1300. Temperatures dropped. The Little Ice Age began. Conditions became harsher, farming more difficult. Sea ice made navigation dangerous. The theory claims the Norse either died out or abandoned Greenland to return to Iceland or Norway. But here's the problem with that theory. Archaeological excavations show the Norse adapted successfully for centuries. They modified their diet, changed agricultural practices, survived harsh conditions before. Why would gradual climate change suddenly make survival impossible? More troubling, no graves from the final decades. Greenland's frozen soil preserves bodies remarkably well. Earlier, Norse graves contain well-preserved remains, but from roughly 1350 onward, graves disappear. Did people stop dying? Unlikely. Did they change burial practices? Possibly. Or did something else happen? Dr. Niels Linderup from the University of Copenhagen analyzed hundreds of Norse skeletons from Greenland. His research revealed declining health in later periods. Shorter stature, evidence of malnutrition, bone lesions suggesting disease. But even malnourished populations leave graves. The absence of late-period burials suggests either a dramatic population decline or rapid abandonment. Items left behind tell another story. Valuable possessions remained in homes, church vestments, personal belongings, things people wouldn't abandon willingly. It's as if the Norse meant to return, but never did. Contact with Norway decreased through the 1400s. Ships visited less frequently. Trade declined. But that doesn't explain total disappearance. Some researchers propose the Norse were killed by Inuit people expanding into Greenland. Conflict over resources. The Inuit oral tradition contains no accounts of destroying Norse settlements, and archaeological evidence doesn't show warfare. Another theory suggests the Norse, left by ship, sailed back to Iceland during a brief period of favorable conditions. But Norwegian records don't document any mass arrival of Greenland refugees. Where would several thousand people go without leaving records? The mystery deepens when you consider the dogs. Excavations found dog skeletons in the settlements, not butchered for food, just dead. If people were slowly starving, they would have eaten the dogs. If they evacuated, they would have taken them. The dogs were left behind to die. What scenario explains abandoning settlements, leaving valuables, and letting animals starve? Plague is one possibility. Black Death reached Norway in 1349. Ships trading with Greenland could have carried it. A rapid epidemic could explain sudden population loss, bodies buried hastily or left unburied. But plague graves have distinctive characteristics. Mass burials, multiple bodies in single graves. These haven't been found in Greenland Norse sites. The Catholic Church maintained a diocese in Greenland until 1560, a bishop appointed to an abandoned diocese. The church kept sending bishops to shepherd a flock that no longer existed. Eventually, Rome acknowledged the obvious. The Greenland Norse were gone. 400 years of successful colonization ended without explanation. An entire population vanished from historical record. Their settlements stand empty, their churches silent, and we still don't know where they went or what happened. Number 9 takes us to the Mississippi River Valley and the Mississippian culture, specifically the city of Cahokia. At its peak around 1200 AD, Cahokia was larger than London. Over 20,000 people lived in the urban core, another 30,000 in surrounding communities. It was the largest city north of Mexico in pre-Columbian America. The site features over 100 earthen mounds. The largest, Monk's Mound, covers 14 acres at its base, rises 100 feet high. Moving that much earth required millions of basket loads, decades of coordinated labor. Cahokia was a major trade center. Artifacts from across North America have been found there. Copper from the Great Lakes, shells from the Gulf Coast, stones from Appalachia. The city featured a wooden structure called Woodhenge, a circle of posts that functioned as a solar calendar. This was a sophisticated urban civilization. Then it was abandoned. By 1350 AD, Cahokia was essentially deserted. Within 150 years, a thriving metropolis became a ghost town. What happened? The archaeological evidence shows a pattern of boom and bust. Cahokia grew rapidly, population surged, then crashed. Environmental studies revealed deforestation around the city, soil erosion, flooding. Cahokia's rapid growth may have overtaxed local resources, but that's not the whole story. Dr. Timothy Pocketat from the University of Illinois has excavated Cahokia for decades. His research uncovered something disturbing: evidence of mass human sacrifice. In 1967, excavations beneath Mound 72 revealed mass graves. Over 270 bodies, young women buried in rows, 53 young women in one pit, killed and buried together. Other pits contained bodies with heads and hands removed, signs of ritual execution. This wasn't warfare. This was sacrifice on an industrial scale. What could justify killing hundreds of people? Some archaeologists interpret this as elite burials, retainers killed to accompany leaders into the afterlife. But the scale is unprecedented in North American archaeology. Carbon dating places these burials at Cahokia's peak, around 1100 AD, when the city was at maximum power. If human sacrifice was practiced during good times, what happened during bad times? Climate data shows a cold snap around 1250 AD. Temperatures dropped. Growing seasons shortened. Agricultural stress would have affected a city of 20,000. But again, this doesn't explain abandonment, just adaptation. More recent research suggests political collapse. Cahokia appears to have been ruled by powerful chiefs, a hierarchical society with distinct classes. When central authority weakened, the system couldn't maintain itself. People dispersed to smaller communities, returned to less centralized lifestyles. But why didn't anyone rebuild? Why didn't Cahokia recover? Other Mississippian cities faced similar collapses. Throughout the Mississippi River Valley, large sites were abandoned around the same period. Moundville in Alabama, Etowah in Georgia, Spiro in Oklahoma, all abandoned between 1300 and 1400 AD. Something affected the entire Mississippian culture, not just one city. When European explorers arrived in the 1500s, they found much smaller Native American communities. De Soto's expedition in 1541 encountered Mississippian remnants, but nothing like Cahokia's scale. The great mound-building civilizations were gone. European diseases devastating native populations in the 1500s couldn't explain Cahokia's abandonment. That happened 200 years earlier. Something internal to Mississippian society caused its collapse. French explorers who mapped the region in the 1600s noted the massive mounds. They asked local tribes who built them. The natives said they didn't know. Ancient peoples, long gone. In just 300 years, the memory of Cahokia had faded. When American settlers arrived in the 1800s, they speculated about Viking visitors or lost tribes of Israel building the mounds. They couldn't believe Native Americans had created such monuments. Ironically, Native descendants had forgotten too. A civilization that dominated the American Midwest for centuries disappeared so completely that their own descendants lost the history. Cahokia stands as America's greatest archaeological mystery. 20,000 people building a city that rivaled European capitals, then abandoning it all within a few generations. The mounds remain, silent testimony to a vanished culture. Number 10 brings us to the Mediterranean and the enigmatic Sea Peoples. This case is different from the others. The Sea Peoples didn't have a civilization that vanished. They appeared, destroyed civilizations, then vanished themselves. Around 1200 BC, the Bronze Age world collapsed. Within 50 years, nearly every major civilization in the eastern Mediterranean was destroyed or severely weakened. The Hittite Empire fell, Mycenaean Greece collapsed, Ugarit burned, Cyprus devastated. Egyptian records describe desperate battles. Who caused this chaos? Egyptian inscriptions blame the Sea Peoples, raiders arriving by ship, attacking coastlines and cities. But who were they? We don't know. They appeared suddenly, destroyed empires, then disappeared from history. Egyptian records list names: the Peliset, the Sheridan, the Luca, others. But these names don't correspond to known civilizations. No homeland identified. No origin explained. Pharaoh Ramesses III fought major battles against them around 1177 BC. His temple at Medinet Habu shows detailed reliefs of the battles. The images depict ships, warriors with distinctive clothing and weapons, families migrating with carts. These weren't just raiders, these were entire peoples on the move. But moving from where? And why? The destruction was systematic. City after city along the Mediterranean coast burned. Archaeological layers show the same pattern. Destruction horizons, cities abandoned, Bronze Age civilization ended. Only Egypt survived. Barely. But Egypt was weakened. The empire never fully recovered. The Bronze Age collapse remains one of history's greatest mysteries. Multiple factors contributed: climate change, earthquake storms, economic disruption, warfare. But the Sea Peoples appear at the center of the chaos. Some researchers propose they were climate refugees, fleeing environmental disasters in their homelands. But if so, where were their homelands? DNA analysis of ancient remains might provide answers, but we don't have confirmed Sea Peoples burials to test. After the destruction, the Sea Peoples vanished. Some may have settled in the Levant. The Philistines might be descended from the Peliset. But most of the groups simply disappear from records. They came, they destroyed, they left. No trace of their culture before the attacks, no clear evidence of where they went after. The civilizations they destroyed left ruins. The Sea Peoples left almost nothing. Dr. Eric Klein from George Washington University has studied the Bronze Age collapse extensively. His research shows how interconnected the ancient Mediterranean was. Trade networks linked Mycenae, Egypt, Hatti, and other kingdoms. When one fell, others followed. The system was fragile. The Sea Peoples disrupted it. Catastrophic collapse resulted. But this doesn't explain who the Sea Peoples were or where they originated. Recently, some researchers proposed a different theory. What if the Sea Peoples weren't invaders from elsewhere? What if they were refugees from the collapsing civilizations themselves? Climate stress, crop failures, earthquakes, political instability. These pressures could have displaced populations, turned them into migrating warrior bands. The Sea Peoples might have been products of collapse, not its cause. But this theory has problems too. Egyptian sources clearly describe them as foreign. The debate continues. What's certain is that the Bronze Age world ended violently. Literate civilizations fell, writing systems disappeared, urban centers abandoned. A dark age followed. Mediterranean civilization didn't recover for centuries. And at the center of this catastrophe were mysterious peoples who appeared from nowhere, destroyed empires, then vanished. No monuments to mark their passing. No inscriptions telling their story, just the ruins of the civilizations they destroyed. And questions that remain unanswered 3,000 years later. 10 civilizations. 10 mysteries that challenge everything we think we know about history. The Harappans abandoned advanced cities with sophisticated engineering. 5 million people dispersed without explanation. The Maya performed abandonment rituals before leaving their magnificent cities. Not once, but multiple times. Easter Island's creators forgot their own writing system within generations. Knowledge vanished faster than the forests. Angkor's population walked away from humanity's largest pre-industrial city, taking their reasons into silence. The ancestral Puebloans built fortified cliff dwellings, then abandoned them. Their society tore itself apart before vanishing. The builders of Stonehenge disappeared so completely their DNA barely exists in modern populations. Tiwanaku's precision stonework remains unexplained, the engineering knowledge lost when the city was abandoned. The Greenland Norse vanished after 400 years of successful settlement. No graves, no records, gone. Cahokia grew larger than London, then emptied within generations. A metropolis reduced to silent mounds. The Sea Peoples destroyed Bronze Age civilization, then disappeared themselves, leaving only ruins and questions. The pattern is undeniable. These weren't gradual declines. These were rapid collapses that left populations scattered and knowledge lost. Official explanations point to drought, disease, warfare, environmental stress. But the evidence shows something more complex. These civilizations had survived challenges before. They had adaptive capacity, sophisticated knowledge, yet they vanished anyway. What the mainstream narrative avoids is uncomfortable truth. We don't actually know what happened. Archaeological evidence can show when something occurred, sometimes how, rarely why. The motivations, the decisions, the human experiences that led to abandonment, those are lost. What remains are ruins and questions. Cities built to last centuries, abandoned in years, writing systems forgotten within generations, engineering knowledge that vanished without transmission. This should trouble us. If civilizations this advanced could disappear so completely, what does that say about our own? The Harappans had plumbing we didn't match until modern times. Gone. The Maya understood astronomy and mathematics at levels that took Europe centuries to reach. Abandoned, Cahokia was larger than most European cities of its era. Empty. None of these cultures thought they would vanish. They built monuments, meant to last forever. Those monuments remain, but the people are gone. History likes clear narratives, rise and fall, cause and effect. But sometimes civilizations just end, rapidly, completely, without satisfying explanation. The evidence has been presented, the patterns revealed. What you believe is your decision to make. But remember this, every one of these civilizations thought they would endure. They were wrong. The ruins stand as testament, not to their achievements, but to their disappearance. We study them. We excavate their cities. We analyze their artifacts. But we still don't truly understand what happened. Maybe that's the real mystery. Not that they vanished, but that we still can't explain why. Stay curious. Stay skeptical. Question everything you're told. Because the truth about the past isn't as settled as they want you to believe.